If you're new to Ask Reddit cheating drama, make sure to subscribe and like the video. It only takes a few seconds, but it really motivates us to create more crazy cheating stories. Now, let's get into the story. Some stories aren't born from imagination. They're born from quiet heartbreak, nursed in silence, kept alive by memory, and written in the spaces where trust once lived. This is not a story about revenge. It's not even a story about love. It's a story about what happens when love breaks without warning, and the people you trust most become strangers in the span of a breath. When I caught my husband in bed with my best friend, my world didn't explode. It cracked, slowly, quietly, like ice splitting underfoot. This is my story, of betrayal, of survival, and of becoming someone I never thought I had to be. My name is Ava Monroe. I'm 35 years old, and until recently I thought I understood what betrayal felt like. I'd seen it played out in movies, read about it in novels, heard murmurs of it in whispered conversations over wine and too-late dinners. But when betrayal shows up at your own front door, it doesn't knock. It doesn't introduce itself. It breaks in quietly, settles into your life, and watches you unravel. This isn't a story about anger. Not at first. It's a story about slow decay, about trust fraying like an old sweater you didn't realize had been eaten through until your arm slipped right out the sleeve. I didn't lose my marriage in a fight. I lost it in a look, in a laugh, in a bed that still smelled like home. But I'm getting ahead of myself. When it was good, Ethan and I used to be that couple. You know the type. The ones who kiss in grocery store aisles and share inside jokes in the middle of crowded rooms. He was charming in that understated, effortlessly magnetic way, the kind of man who made you feel like the only person in the world when he looked at you. We got married in Lake Tahoe under a canopy of pines and fading sunlight. We made promises, built a life, 2 dogs, a home outside Denver, morning coffee routines and matching mugs. For a while, we were solid. I worked as a freelance photographer, portraits, weddings, the occasional editorial. Ethan ran a small but growing investment firm, the kind of business that never quite stops calling, even at midnight. And then, life happened. Deadlines, missed dinners, longer silences. Love didn't vanish. It just got quieter, colder, less interested in coming home. That's when Sloane Hartley stepped in. My best friend since freshman year of college, wild, brilliant, magnetic Sloane, who always had better clothes, better stories, better instincts, and, as it turned out, a better grasp on my husband's attention than I did. The subtle shift. Looking back now, I realize how blind I was to the signs, to the shift in Ethan's tone when he spoke about her, to the way she started complimenting him in front of me. Casual, but a little too often. To the dinners she accidentally stayed for too long. He changed, started hitting the gym again, got a new haircut, picked up a cologne I'd never seen before, the kind with notes of leather and something darker, more unfamiliar. Sloane pulled back, called less, stopped asking how I was. There was this stiffness, like she was playing a role she no longer had the stomach for, but I didn't question it. Because who suspects their own best friend? Who thinks the person who helped zip up your wedding dress would one day slip out of theirs to lie beside your husband? I didn't see it. Or maybe I didn't want to. Until the night everything changed. The night everything fell apart. I wasn't supposed to be home. Ethan thought I had a shoot in Aspen, an engagement session that got rescheduled at the last minute. I thought, maybe stupidly, I'd surprise him. I picked up his favorite takeout, pad thai with extra lime, and that ridiculously overpriced bourbon he'd been obsessed with. The house was quiet when I stepped in, too quiet, the kind of silence that isn't empty, but loaded, thick, watching you. I walked up the stairs slowly, not because I was trying to sneak, but because some part of me already knew something was wrong, knew the air was too still, the light too dim. The bedroom door was half open. A soft laugh, her laugh, Sloane's, and then the silence that always comes right after sin. I pushed the door open, still clutching the takeout bag like an idiot. Ethan's back, bare, Sloane's hair spilling across my pillow, her arm draped across him like she belonged there. like she'd always belonged there. Neither of them spoke. Neither of them moved. They just looked at me, eyes wide, frozen, like I was the one intruding. Like I was the mistake. I didn't scream, didn't cry, didn't shatter anything except the part of me that believed in forever. I didn't remember walking out of the room. I remember the sound of the takeout bag dropping to the floor, pad thai spilling, that bourbon bottle rolling slowly across the hardwood, clinking against the dresser. Funny, the mind clings to the most irrelevant details when everything else is falling apart. They didn't say my name, not Ethan, not Sloane, just silence. The kind that wraps around your throat and chokes the scream before it ever forms. I walked down the stairs on autopilot, my hand trembling on the banister. I think I laughed, just once, soft and bitter. Not because anything was funny, but because reality had become too absurd not to. By the time Ethan caught up with me, I was already at the front door. "Ava, wait, please." I didn't turn around. Not yet. Not until I could speak without crumbling. "Don't," I said. My voice didn't sound like mine. It was low, controlled, detached even, the kind of tone people use right before something inside them dies for good. Behind him, I could hear Sloane shuffling in the hallway, whispering something too low to make out. I didn't want to hear her voice. If I did, I would have broken something. A vase, a jaw, maybe both. The confrontation. I swear, it wasn't. "Don't lie to me, Ethan." I turned to face him. His eyes were wide, pupils blown with fear or guilt. I couldn't tell which. He was wearing the t-shirt I got him for our 3rd anniversary, the one that said, "I still do," in tiny cursive over the heart. I almost laughed again. "How long?" I asked. He hesitated. That was enough. "You paused. That means it wasn't a mistake. It means you chose her, repeatedly." "Ava, it wasn't like that. It just happened. One night, we were drunk and—" I raised a hand. "Don't insult me with the cliché. Don't make this some cheap, alcohol-fueled accident. You don't end up in bed with my best friend by accident, Ethan." His mouth opened, then closed. His jaw clenched the way it always did when he didn't know how to fix something. "You were my person," I whispered. "You both were." The collapse. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my car in the driveway for hours, staring at the porch light we'd installed together. The one that flickered every time it rained. I should have left, driven anywhere. But I couldn't make my hands move. I wasn't crying. Not yet. I felt hollow. Like someone had scooped everything out of me and left behind skin and bone and disbelief. I thought about our first road trip, the dog we almost adopted, the way Sloane and I used to finish each other's sentences, the bridal shower she threw for me, champagne flutes with little gold letters that spelled out Team Ava. The betrayal didn't just come from one side. It came from both. It came from home. The next morning, when I walked back into the house at dawn, they were gone. No note, no apology, just silence, and the smell of Sloane's perfume still lingering on the sheets. I didn't pack, I didn't scream, I didn't rage. I walked to the closet, pulled out a suitcase, and started folding. Not because I was sure I was leaving, but because if I stayed one more minute in that house, in that bedroom, with that memory, I would never come back from it. Internal monologue. People talk about heartbreak like it's loud, like it's messy, like it's sobbing on the bathroom floor or throwing plates at the wall. But sometimes, heartbreak is a slow leak, a quiet implosion, the sound of nothing. And nothing is so much louder than you think. I wasn't ready to talk to either of them. Not yet. I didn't even know what I'd say. There were no words for the way it felt to watch the two people you loved most choose each other in your absence. It's not just betrayal. It's erasure. It's like watching a painting you spent years creating get painted over, while you're still holding the brush. I didn't answer anyone's calls, not my mother who texted me 3 times asking how the photo shoot in Aspen went, not Melissa, a mutual friend who probably already heard whispers and wanted confirmation, and certainly not Ethan, or Sloane. I stared at my phone so long the screen went black from inactivity, reflecting my face in the dark glass. I looked older, and strangely younger at the same time. Like heartbreak had regressed me to some lost, naive version of myself. I left the house 2 days later. I didn't say goodbye, didn't leave a note, didn't even take all my clothes, just what I could fit in the car, 3 suitcases, my camera, a box of old letters I couldn't bring myself to throw out, and my dog Riley, who followed me out without question. We drove. Nowhere in particular, just away. Motel mirrors and coffee stains. There's something eerily grounding about cheap motels. The buzzing overhead lights, the floral bedspreads that never match the curtains, the coffee that tastes like burnt memories. I stayed in one just outside Colorado Springs, room 214. It smelled like lemon disinfectant and regret. That night, I opened my laptop, thinking I'd answer work emails, maybe throw myself into editing, distract my mind, but instead, I opened an old folder I hadn't looked at in years. Inside were hundreds of photos, snapshots of a life I thought was real, Ethan holding Riley as a puppy, Sloane and I in matching pajamas on my bachelorette weekend, a blurry selfie of all 3 of us on my birthday, laughing, drunk, so damn happy. I slammed the laptop shut. My hands were shaking. The unspoken shame. Here's the thing no one tells you about being the one who was betrayed. People look at you like you're broken, like you let it happen, like you weren't enough. Even if no one says it outright, you feel it in the way they pause before asking, "So, what are you going to do?" As if the answer is easy. As if there's a map for what to do when your husband of 10 years fucks your best friend in your marital bed. I didn't want to go back. Not yet. But I also didn't want to be here, in this strange limbo where nothing felt real and everything hurt in slow motion. I stopped sleeping. I stopped eating. I started scrolling through their social media like an addict, torturing myself with photos, captions, anything that might answer the question screaming in my head, why? The message day. 5. An email from Sloane. Subject: please read this. Body: Ava, I know I don't deserve to be heard, but I don't know how to live with myself right now. What I did to you was unforgivable. I am not asking for forgiveness. I just needed you to know that it wasn't because you weren't enough. You were always more than enough. It was me. It was my emptiness. It was my inability to sit with my own loneliness without reaching for something that wasn't mine. I never meant to fall for him, but I did, and I hate myself for it. If I could take it back, I would. Sloane. I didn't reply. Not because I didn't have things to say, but because I wasn't going to be her priest, her confessional booth, her way to feel better about shattering my life. She took something from me that could never be returned, and now she wanted to feel less guilty? No. Rage finds me. It happened on day 7. I woke up shaking. I'd had a dream. No, a memory. Ethan laughing in the kitchen, teasing me about burning the toast. I could almost smell the coffee, hear the dog's paws on the tile. And then I remembered where I was. Alone, in a motel, because they made a choice. I stood up. I screamed. I threw the lamp across the room. I took the framed motel artwork, some awful mountain landscape, and smashed it against the wall. I wanted to destroy everything. Not just objects. Memories. Feelings. The part of me that still loved either of them. Because yes, I still loved Ethan, and yes, I hated myself for it. But that's the thing about rage. It's not weakness. It's the beginning of returning to yourself. It's the first sign that your body remembers it's alive, that your voice is still somewhere in your throat, even if it's hoarse from crying and silenced by betrayal. And in that moment, in that wrecked motel room, barefoot and breathless, I made a decision. I would not be the one who walked away from the fire like a victim. I would be the one who rebuilt, piece by goddamn piece. But first, I was going to go home, and I was going to look them in the eye. It took me 8 days to go back. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed to. There's something about walking into a place that once felt like home and realizing it doesn't recognize you anymore. The door creaked the same way. Riley wagged his tail like nothing had changed, but the house felt hollow, like it had exhaled me long before I ever walked out. I wasn't sure what I expected when I stepped inside. Maybe silence, maybe the lingering scent of her perfume still clinging to the air, but instead, I found Ethan, alone, sitting on the couch like he'd aged 10 years in a week. He looked up as I entered, eyes red, beard unshaved, and for a second, just a second, I almost felt sorry for him. But that moment passed. The conversation we never had. Ava. He stood up. No, I said. Calm, steady. Sit. He did. I walked to the fireplace mantel, touched the framed photo of us in Paris, our 5th anniversary. I was wearing that white dress he loved. He had his arms wrapped around me like he couldn't believe I was real. I turned it face down. Do you love her? I asked. He hesitated. He always hesitated when the truth was sharp. I don't know, he said finally. Wrong answer, I replied. There was a time when I don't know would have been honest. Now it's just cowardice. He looked away. I didn't plan for this to happen. You didn't mean to sleep with my best friend? I cut in. Do you know how many things have to happen before two people end up in bed together? You made 1,000 tiny decisions that led you there. Don't you dare minimize that. He put his head in his hands. You know the worst part? I said, softer now. It's not that you cheated. It's who you did it with. She was my person too. And you two, you didn't just betray me. You buried me. I've been dying inside since, he murmured. I let out a breathless laugh. You've been dying? Ethan, I've been a ghost for the last 8 days. You don't get to play the victim in the graveyard you dug. A knock at the door. Right on cue. 3 soft knocks. I didn't need to open it to know who it was. I glanced at Ethan. Did you tell her I'd be here? He didn't answer. I walked to the door, opened it. There she was. Sloane, in a beige trench coat, no makeup, hair tied back like she was mourning something, or maybe trying to look less like the woman who'd fucked her best friend's husband. Ava, she said, breath catching in her throat. Please, I didn't come to fight. I'm not here to fight either, I said. I'm here to say goodbye. She blinked. What do you mean? I stepped outside, closed the door behind me. What I mean, Sloane, I said, voice low, even, almost eerily calm, is that whatever version of you I had in my life, whatever loyalty, whatever sisterhood, I buried her 8 days ago. Her eyes shimmered. I know I killed that, and I hate myself every day. This isn't about you hating yourself, I interrupted. This isn't even about you. This is about me, about what I allowed, about what I ignored, about how much I gave away without ever asking myself if I was okay. Sloane said nothing. I leaned in, close enough for only her to hear. You were supposed to protect me from this kind of pain, not be the one to deliver it. Her breath hitched. I stepped back. You and Ethan deserve each other, I said, not as a compliment, but as a death sentence. Then I walked away. Letting go isn't always graceful. I didn't cry when I drove off. I didn't look back. But I didn't feel free either. Not yet. Because closure isn't a one-time thing. It's not a dramatic goodbye or a perfect one-liner. It's a slow, painful process of unlearning every we and replacing it with me. It's walking into an empty apartment and realizing your silence is finally your own. It's making coffee in the morning and not setting out 2 mugs. It's learning how to exist again in the aftermath of people who should have stayed, but didn't. The fire. Within. That night, I lit a candle. Just one. Not for romance, not for softness, but for ritual. A symbolic burning of everything they thought they took from me. And as the wax melted slowly, I whispered to the dark, You can't bury a woman who's already rising. The first few mornings were the hardest. Waking up without Ethan beside me, without the weight of Riley's paws tapping across the bedroom floor, without the smell of brewed coffee drifting in from the kitchen. Just silence. But this time, the silence didn't scream at me. It waited, like it was giving me space to relearn who I was. A new apartment, a new beginning, sort of. I moved into a small loft downtown, exposed brick, high windows, a tiny balcony where the city buzzed just enough to remind me I wasn't invisible. It was nothing like the house Ethan and I shared. No neutral walls, no matching wine glasses, no polished surfaces. This place was mine, raw, unfinished, honest. I bought new dishes, black ceramic ones that chipped easily but felt like armor. I threw away the sheets we used to sleep on. I let myself sleep on the couch for 2 weeks because the bed felt too official. And every night, I'd sit on the balcony with a glass of wine, watch the streetlights flicker, and ask myself one question. What now? The lonely kind of free people romanticize freedom. They forget to mention how lonely it is at first, how quiet, how heavy. There were nights I'd scroll through my phone, see old photos, and feel something twist deep in my chest. The kind of ache that doesn't shout, it lingers. But here's the thing. I didn't run from those feelings. I sat with them. Let them crawl into bed with me. Let them bruise me. Because healing isn't pretending you're fine. It's knowing you're not, and still choosing to show up for yourself anyway. The first laugh. It happened on a Tuesday. I was at a bookstore cafe, flipping through a copy of Joan Didion's The Year of Magical Thinking, when the barista spilled an entire cup of matcha on a man standing behind me. Green everywhere. His white shirt looked like it had been through a modern art performance. I looked up and our eyes met. He looked down at his shirt, then at me, and said totally deadpan, "I guess this is what I get for trying something healthy." I laughed, out loud, like really laughed. It startled me. Startled him too. And just like that, something cracked open. Not love, not interest, just a reminder that I was still capable of joy, that the part of me who laughed hadn't died with the betrayal, the letter I never sent. One night, I wrote Sloane a letter. I didn't plan to send it, but I had to get it out of me. You didn't just betray me. You rewrote me, without permission. You took a version of myself I'd trusted with you for over a decade and shattered her. But here's what you didn't take. You didn't take my ability to rebuild. You didn't take my future. You didn't take the woman I'm becoming, even if you played a part in breaking the one I was. I folded it, burned it on the balcony, watched the ashes swirl up into the night like ghosts finally set free, learning myself. Again, I started walking more, reading again, taking portraits of strangers in parks, eating dinner alone without my phone, lighting candles for no reason except that I wanted to. I wasn't moving on. That phrase felt too clean, too sharp. I was moving through. And with every small, stubborn act, I was choosing me. Not the version Ethan fell out of love with, not the version Sloane betrayed, but the one who was still standing, even if her knees still shook. The truth. Finally. Here's what I've learned. You don't heal by pretending they didn't hurt you. You heal by acknowledging the wound, then refusing to let it define you. I don't forgive them. Not yet. Maybe never. But I've started forgiving myself. For ignoring the signs. For loving them too hard. For thinking loyalty meant silence. And maybe, just maybe, that's where healing truly begins. There's a kind of peace that creeps in when you stop needing things to make sense. I no longer needed to dissect why they did it, or how they justified it. I had stopped checking their social media, stopped searching for closure in places I knew only offered more splinters. Some wounds stop bleeding long before they stop hurting, but pain softens eventually. Even grief gets tired. The man with the camera. I met him on a Sunday afternoon in City Park. He was crouched low to the ground, camera in hand, photographing a group of kids playing soccer. The sunlight hit his profile just right, Messy hair, faded hoodie, the lens strap wrapped around his wrist like second nature. I was walking Riley. He looked up and smiled. "Your dog's got a killer stare. Can I?" I nodded, watching as he crouched to Riley's level, made some ridiculous sound, and snapped 3 quick shots. We talked, just for a few minutes. His name was Caleb, divorced, 2 years, freelance photojournalist, no pressure, no flirtation, just curiosity, kindness, a gentle energy I hadn't felt in a long time. He didn't ask personal questions, didn't look at me like I was damaged, just offered me a small smile and said, "You've got a good stillness about you." I didn't know what that meant, but I liked how it sounded. The dinner I didn't expect. 2 weeks later, he found me again, this time in a used bookstore near downtown. We both reached for the same worn copy of On the Road, laughed, talked about Kerouac and chaos, and whether solitude was a choice or a result. He didn't ask for my number. He asked if I wanted to grab pho, and I said yes, not because I was ready, but because I was curious. The difference. Caleb didn't try to impress me. He didn't overshare or overanalyze. He asked good questions, then actually listened. He paid for dinner but didn't make a show of it. He didn't touch me. Not my arm, not my hand, not even when we said goodbye. And that somehow felt more intimate than any touch could have been. It was the first time I walked away from a man without feeling like I owed him something. I didn't feel butterflies, but I did feel warm and safe. And honestly, that felt like everything. The letter I wrote to myself. That night, I lit a candle, not for ritual, not for defiance, just because the room smelled like lavender when I did. I pulled out a notebook and wrote a letter, not to Ethan, not to Sloan, but to me. Dear Ava, you survived the worst of it. You let it break you, but not define you. You mourned what you lost without trying to force healing before you were ready. You showed up, even when it hurt, even when you didn't want to. You are not hard to love. You just loved people who didn't know how to hold something real. This new life, it's not perfect, but it's yours. And that's more than enough. A shift. Finally, I still had moments. Like when I saw couples holding hands and felt a sudden pang of absence. Or when a friend asked how Ethan was, forgetting, for a second, what had happened. But those moments didn't wreck me anymore. They passed like weather, and in their place, small joys, quiet confidence, a growing sense that maybe I wasn't just healing. Maybe I was becoming someone entirely new. It happened on a Wednesday. I had just come back from a photo walk, spent the morning chasing sunlight through alleyways and abandoned buildings, and there it was. His car, parked in front of my building, black, clean, familiar in that way only things tied to pain can be. I froze. For a second, I considered walking the other way, pretending I didn't see it, pretending I wasn't that woman anymore, but that would have been a lie, and I was done with lies. The confrontation I didn't plan. When I opened the door to the lobby, he was there. Ethan. In a gray sweater I used to steal on cold mornings, holding a small paper bag. Hair longer. Eyes tired. Not broken, but worn in the way people are when life stops making sense. "Ava," he said, like it still meant something. "I didn't invite you here," I replied. He nodded. "I know. I wasn't sure you'd even come downstairs." Silence stretched. He shifted the bag in his hands. "I brought you something," he said, almost sheepishly. "From that bakery in Boulder. You used to love their blueberry scones." My throat tightened. "You don't get to bring pastries to a funeral, Ethan," I said. "This version of us died months ago." "I know," he whispered, but I needed to say it, face to face. What I couldn't say that night. Words we never said. "I didn't love her the way I loved you," he said. "Not even close. It was attention, distraction. I think I felt like I was disappearing. And she noticed. She noticed because I trusted her with the parts of you I thought were safe," I said quietly. He looked down. "I lost both of you." "No," I corrected. "You gave us up. There's a difference." He nodded. Didn't argue. There was something deeply strange about seeing the man you once pictured forever with and feeling nothing. No heat, no ache, just space. "I'm not here to win you back," Ethan said. "I don't deserve that. I just needed you to know that you were never the mistake." I looked at him. Really looked. He meant it. And for the first time, I didn't need him to. Because the woman standing there? She wasn't waiting for answers anymore. The forgiveness I didn't expect. "I forgive you," I said. Soft, clear, surprising even myself. His eyes widened. "Not for you," I added. "For me. Because carrying that weight, it's not mine anymore." He nodded slowly, eyes glassy. "And Sloane?" he asked. I took a breath. "She's not in my story anymore, not even as the villain, just edited out." He blinked hard, once, then again, and with a quiet thank you, he left, just like that. No begging, no drama, no closure because I already had it. Later that night, I sat on my balcony, candle lit, journal open, pen poised. I didn't write about Ethan. I wrote about me, about how grief changes shape, how sometimes we don't heal by returning to who we were, but by becoming someone we never thought we'd have to be. And then, my phone buzzed. A message. "Caleb, you still owe me a rematch at trivia night, unless you're afraid of losing again." I smiled, not because I was in love, not because I was ready, but because I could smile. Because someone saw me, not as a broken thing, not as a project to fix, but as a person. Just a person. With edges and shadows and warmth still left to give. Final lines for this chapter. I don't know where this goes. With Caleb. With anything. But I know where I am. Here. Alive. Lighter. And for the first time in a long time, I feel like I belong entirely to myself. It had been 3 months. 3 months since I walked away from the house I once called home. 3 months since I stood on the sidewalk and forgave a man who didn't know how to hold me. 3 months since I realized that closure doesn't come from them. It comes from me. I had expected healing to be loud, victorious, but instead it was quiet. Like waking up one morning and noticing the pain didn't sit on your chest the way it used to. You still feel it, but it doesn't define the shape of your day anymore. Mornings. Now I have a new routine. Black coffee. A playlist that shifts with my mood, sometimes Stevie Nicks, sometimes Phoebe Bridgers. A slow walk with Riley. He still pulls the leash every time we pass the bakery with the blue awning. I stop at the corner flower stand every Friday. Buy myself sunflowers or wild tulips if they're in season. Not because I'm celebrating something, but because I'm alive. And some days that's reason enough. Caleb. Again. We didn't rush. No dramatic declarations, no blurred lines, just moments. A shared dinner, a walk through an art exhibit where we both hated the same installation and laughed so hard we got shushed. A Sunday morning where he brought over waffles and sat barefoot on my floor, talking about the time he lived in Morocco and got lost in the souks. He never asked for more than I could give, never poked at the places I hadn't let fully heal. He just showed up and stayed, not as a fix, but as presence. The first time I let him in, not into my bed, into my space, into my quiet. I invited him over one night, not for a date, just to cook together. We played music too loud, burned the garlic bread, danced in socks on my kitchen tile. At one point, he looked at me, really looked, and said, "You feel like a person who's rebuilt herself from the bones up." And I didn't flinch, because it was true. Where I am now, I'm not in love. Not yet. But I'm also not afraid of it anymore. I trust myself. I trust my instincts. I know the difference now between being chosen and being held out of habit. I don't chase. I don't shrink. I don't pour myself into people with cracks too wide to fill. Instead, I sit with my peace. I light candles just because. I dance alone in my apartment when the mood hits. I flirt with the idea that the rest of my life might actually be beautiful. The ending that isn't you wanted a story about betrayal, but this turned into something else. A story about return, to the body, to the breath, to the self. The woman who was shattered is gone. The woman who rose from her remains? She doesn't need a happy ending. She is one. Healing is not a destination, it's a decision. 1,000 little ones, made quietly, in rooms no one else sees. I don't have a perfect ending for you. There's no fairy tale reunion, no cinematic revenge. Just a woman who walked through fire, and instead of turning to ash, chose to rise. Smoky, scarred, and stunningly whole. To anyone who's ever been broken in secret, you are not alone. You are not too much. And one day you will look back and realize, the day it all fell apart was the day you finally came home to yourself.